Before we get started, guys, just wanted to remind you that the Golden State with Mates Patreon is now live, providing even more written and podcast content from myself. Members will also go into a monthly draw, the first of which will be for a brand new Stephen Curry jersey, which I'll announce on October 20, just 24 hours out from Golden State's opening regular season game against the Los Angeles Lakers. If it sounds like you might be interested, I'll leave a link in the description. Go and check it out. Coming up on this episode, my takeaways from Jonathan Kuminga's agent, Aaron Turner, interestingly doing the media rounds over the past 48 hours. Plenty to talk about as the stalemate between Kuminga's camp and the Warriors continues. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. I, like so many Warrior fans, have been engrossed and fascinated with Aaron Turner, Jonathan Kuminga's agent, doing the media rounds over the past 48 hours or so. Really a unique circumstance where you've got this notable restricted free agent, this young talent who 9 days out from media day still doesn't have a deal with his team, obviously wants to leave the team. The team probably in a different situation would be happy to move on from him, but we know the Warriors can't get the necessary value they want in this situation. So they are looking to retain him. And you've got the agent coming out and just basically reaching out to anyone that's willing to listen and willing to talk to him. And I mean reach out because obviously I write for bluemanhoop.com, and I got a tweet notification the other day, and who followed bluemanhoop.com? Aaron Turner. And so I feel like I could have reached out, whether as the site editor for bluemanhoop.com or on this podcast, who knows, and Aaron Turner might have been willing to speak to me over these negotiations, because he has spoken to absolutely everyone really over the past 48 hours. So it's crazy. And in some ways it's excellent insight, right? It's excellent insight for us as fans and as the audience to get a little bit more of an understanding of what's going on. But the first thing that comes to my mind is, what's he doing it for? What's he doing it for? Because it's not for us. It's not for us to gain greater insight to these negotiations, albeit it does do that a little bit, no doubt. There's clearly a motive going on from his side for him and for Kuminga's camp and for his agent, Aaron Turner, to come out and speak so openly and publicly. There is a motive going on here. So my initial thought is, okay, so why is that happening? The first thing I can think of, and based really on my opinion, and I think one that's shared by a lot of Warrior fans, in terms of the media narrative here, and we got the massive report from Shams and Slater earlier in the week, which had the Warriors moving from their 2-year, $45 million contract with a second-year team option, upping that to a 3-year, $75 million contract with a third-year team option. And that completely changed the narrative to me, because up until that point, I was thinking, okay, this is on the Warriors. The Warriors are to blame for this current stalemate, right? Because I think they should increase or give some greater incentive to JK to sign a contract, more so than the 2-year 45 with a team option. And I think myself and a lot of Warrior fans, I spoke with Stevie about this earlier in the week, like we were kind of understanding as to why Kuminga would be thinking about the qualifying offer based in comparison to that 2-year 45. But with the 3-year 75, that has completely flipped the narrative to, no, like this is on Kuminga now. Like, are you really going to turn down $48 million in guaranteed money to take the qualifying offer? The Warriors are trying to compromise here. They have increased their offer quite significantly. You've got to try and compromise a little bit as well. And seemingly, externally, again, just from these reports, it seems like you're not willing to do that. And I think JK and specifically his agent, Aaron Turner, probably saw that flip, probably saw that, hey, the media and fans are seeing the Warriors in the wrong, but now they've increased their offer, so they're kind of seeing us in the wrong. So let's flip it back. Let's try and change it again. So we're trying to manipulate this where the Warriors are in the wrong again. And I think that was the main idea of him going out and speaking to everyone about these current negotiations, is basically, and this is the greatest takeaway I had from listening to particularly the episode on the Hoop Collective with Slater and Brian Windhorst, that was the biggest thing I took away, was him trying to paint this picture that he and JK, like the Kuminga camp, are sacrificing so many things, and therefore that the Warriors should be willing to sacrifice in giving the third year as a player option, which is the demand, I suppose, that Kuminga's camp want. They want the third year player option, And therefore, the contract will be signed straight away. And not only that, but JK will be brought in to trying to win a championship alongside Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, right? So they're trying to paint the picture that they're sacrificing so many things. I want to go through, because this is what I want to lay out in this episode, the different things here that I heard from Aaron Turner, which makes me think he's trying to paint the picture of sacrifice, and that therefore the Warriors should sacrifice in giving into the demand of the third-year player option. The first one I want to state, and I feel so bad for the guy, Al Horford. Horford must be just sitting back behind the scenes and thinking, geez, come on, like, we've been waiting 3 months now. I want to sign, like, it's all ready to go. And all I can say is, fortunately, Al Horford is 39 years old and 18 years into his NBA career, and he would have seen it all before. Maybe not to this degree, but he's seen a lot of things, right? And he would have gone through a lot of things with different negotiations. And so, fortunately, he's that experienced that I don't think there's any threat here of him getting pissed off or anything like that with what's going on. He's happy to sit back and let this play out. But the unfortunate thing, and the reason I feel a bit bad for Al, I suppose, in this situation, is that he's become a point of leverage to me in these Kuminga situations, where the Warriors and Kuminga's camp both together know that Al Horford is such a huge signing for the Warriors. The team desperately needs Al Horford, and Kuminga's camp knows that, right? And they're trying to use that as leverage. So basically what Aaron Turner said, and I heard him say this on the Hoop Collective, is that, oh, well, we know they want Al Horford, and we're okay with that. And he even said, and this is a direct quote, Steve has said openly, having a stretch five, some of the combinations that might loosen up the floor for Jimmy, Draymond, JK dynamic, maybe Al can really help with that. So understand, and I've always been a part of this, and I wrote about it earlier, like, Al Horford might be the only solution the Warriors have to trying to work out a fit between Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Jonathan Kuminga. Like, he's such a huge piece to this, not because of how good he is necessarily as a player at this point of his career, but how he could unlock different lineup combinations. And that is why this signing is so important to the Warriors. And I think Kuminga's camp is trying to play on that. So they have gone into negotiations, and Aaron Turner said, we know you want to sign Al Horford. We know in order to get him on the taxpayer mid-level exception, you cannot go over the second apron, and therefore you have a threshold of what you are capable of paying, right? And so they've basically gone into it and say, we know you want Al Horford. We actually think Al could help JK and help the whole dynamic, so that's fine. That's great. So we're not going to expect you to go into the second tax apron. So they're basically trying to use it as a way of, well, we're sacrificing this, because in a normal scenario, what would be asking for like $30 million a year, but we know you can't do that because you want to sign Al Horford. So we're making this sacrifice that, hey, you know what? We're willing to take a little bit less. We're willing to take less so you can sign Al Horford. But you know what? On the other side, because we're sacrificing that, why don't you give us the player option? Right? Why don't you sacrifice something as well? And the interesting thing to me is, like, they've got a point. Al Horford is an incredibly important signing to the Warriors. I think everyone understands that. But the issue for me in trying to play this sacrifice card is that no one's offering you $30+ million a year anyway. These offers that you're getting from the Suns and the Kings, the Suns is 4 years, 90. That's $22.5 million a year. You've got the Kings offering 63 over 3. That's 21 a year. Don't try and paint it as, oh, well, would be asking for $30 million if the Horford thing wasn't happening, and that we thought that we wanted the team to go over the second apron and willing to go over the second apron. And Aaron Turner specifically said that. He said, we went into these negotiations understanding that the Warriors probably rightfully weren't going to be willing to go over the second apron for us. And so we sacrificed against that and are willing to put ourselves in a position where we take less so the team can sign Al Horford. The issue for me is that those contract numbers of getting upwards of $30 million a year aren't there from anyone, right? That's not there. So you can't sacrifice what's not available to you, right? Like, you can't sacrifice and say, you know what, we're giving up, $32 million a year to take 24, 20, or 23, 24 instead. That's not on the table from any other team. You can't get that money. You can't sacrifice what's not available to you. So I feel bad for Al Horford in a way, because he's sitting back and he's seeing his name and his addition to the Warriors kind of used against the franchise by Kuminga's camp, because they know that the Horford signing is so important to them. So I just think that's a really fascinating element to it, and a very very real way in terms of the Kuminga camp trying to push this notion of sacrifice. The other one that they're trying to do here as well is the Jalen Green, Jalen Johnson contracts. And I heard multiple times on that Hoop Collective episode, Aaron Turner specifically mentioned Jalen Green and Jalen Johnson. Why? What relevance does that have in current negotiations? Well, there is absolutely no doubt that Jonathan Kuminga and his camp view him as a player in a very similar stature to Jalen Green and Jalen Johnson. And we know before the October deadline last year that Jalen Johnson got a 5-year, $150 million contract. And the Rockets, who were in a very similar situation, albeit a little bit different because they're younger, they're not as experienced. Obviously, they've got a little bit more experience by trading Green for KD this summer. But in a very similar situation where the Rockets were undoubtedly looking at Jalen Green last offseason and saying, we do not want to pay you the 5-year max. Like, we just do not believe in your ability to contribute to winning basketball in enough of a fashion. So they're trying to work out a way, okay, how can we get this guy on a contract without having to fork out the full 5 years, as they did with Alperen Şengün, who got a 5-year, $185 million deal. They believe in Şengün as a winning contributor. Jalen Green, they're a lot more questionable about and much more debate there, in a similar way to what the Warriors would have faced last offseason as well. The difference is they got Jalen Green under contract. They said, here's a 3-year, $105 million contract with a 3rd-year player option. And even though Jalen Green had a reasonable season, had a absolutely disastrous first-round matchup against the Warriors outside Game 2, was absolutely horrific. And it didn't surprise me one bit, to be fair. And yet he still had enough value for the Rockets to use him as the centerpiece of a trade for Kevin Durant, which is really crazy. And it makes you wonder where the Warriors would be this offseason if they'd done something similar for Kuminga last offseason, where they gave him it didn't have to be 105, but maybe like 3 years, $80 to $90 million, right? And could they have done that and then been able to spend this offseason, instead of trying to get Kuminga on a new contract and going through this entire free agency debacle, could they have actually flipped Jonathan Kuminga for something of genuine value? Like, I don't know if it's Andrew Wiggins, who's obviously been in a heap of trades, but just someone who they could have, obviously they did a similar thing with Poole a couple of years ago where they traded Poole for Chris Paul. That was more a salary dump thing. Would the Warriors have got to a point where they had to salary dump Kuminga? I don't necessarily think so, right? So long as he wasn't on more than 25, because again, you're trying to stick under the second apron for this season and sign Horford and stuff like that. So the Jalen Green thing is really relevant to me. Obviously, they played together before they came into the NBA. Very similar-ish players in terms of, obviously, Kuminga's bigger and plays a different position, but they are raw, incredibly talented scorers, but a little bit their contributions to winning are very much questioned at this point of their career. And again, incredibly talented scorers, raw, very athletic, got a lot of things going for them. But teams are questioning, how much they're willing to pay those guys and how much they're willing to invest in them in the long term. Like, there's a reason why the Warriors aren't willing to give a 4 or 5-year offer to Kuminga, right? So it just makes you wonder where the Warriors would have been had they done a similar situation with Jalen Green. And it's an interesting quote, because there's been so much speculation about what the Warriors did or didn't offer last offseason to Jonathan Kuminga. And Aaron Turner had a very interesting quote where he said that poison pill provision that would have said, hey, if you trade them out, that's Kuminga, the team has to take them back at the increased salary. They would have had no chance to get a Kevin Durant like they almost did last year with JK being the centerpiece. So that was the choice they made. They didn't want to do a deal. Big quote there. They didn't want to do a deal. Again, no one was upset about that. So Turner's basically claiming, and perhaps rightly so, that, you know what, the Warriors didn't want to get a deal done with Kuminga because they wanted to retain the flexibility to trade him mid-season. Again, if they'd done a deal last offseason before the October 21 deadline or whatever it was, the poison pill provision, as we saw with Moses Moody, you basically you can't trade that mid-season. You just cannot do that. However, you could have spent this entire offseason trying to trade him on his full number, and who knows, you could have got something very significant back. Again, that's all hypothetical, but the Warriors wanted to retain the flexibility to trade him mid-season. That's fine, that's great, but then if you've got the opportunity to trade him mid-season, then, like, you got to take that. And they didn't. And that's the issue. And that's why they're now stuck in a situation where they've had 3 months of free agency without a deal here for Jonathan Kuminga. And in a way, Kevin Durant is partly to blame for this entire scenario because the Warriors and Suns had a deal lined up to have Kuminga go to the Suns, to have KD come to the Warriors, and we wouldn't have had this entire Kuminga scenario throughout the offseason. Kevin Durant would have been a Warrior for the last few months of the last season, and instead of Jimmy Butler, obviously, and then he would still have another year on his contract, and KD would have entered this season as a Warrior, and we would have had none of this entire Jonathan Kuminga stuff. So I'm not putting it on Kevin Durant, but it's just funny, like, he obviously snubbed the Warriors, rejected a move back, even though Golden State and Phoenix were willing to do it. But now that we've got to this point, I don't know why Jalen, like, there are a lot of similarities. There are a lot of links between Jonathan Kuminga and Jalen Green. And I just think the initial deal the Rockets did was a blueprint for Jonathan Kuminga's camp to say, that's us. 3 years, 105, we should be getting a very similar amount to that because we see ourselves in a very similar light to Jalen Green. And you know what? I get it. If Jalen Green's put up more numbers at this point of his career, but if Kuminga had the same opportunity as Jalen Green, yes, I view them in a very similar light. Okay? And so Kuminga's camp, again, and why is Aaron Turner bringing up Jalen Green and Jalen Johnson in these recent interviews? It's because he's using them as a way to say, you know what, we see Kuminga in that similar light as those guys, but we're going into negotiations, understanding, knowing we're not going to get that contract. So again, we're sacrificing. We're not going to get the $30 million per year deal that Jalen Green or Jalen Johnson got. We understand that, so we're willing to sacrifice and take less. But again, that $30 million deal, $30 million per year deal is not on the table from anyone. So again, you cannot sacrifice what's not available to you. And so from that standpoint, Jalen Green and Jalen Johnson's contract has no relevance to what's going on right now in these discussions. No relevance at all. Aside from clearly Turner trying to push the narrative like, oh, well, we could go and get that money, but, again, we're willing to sacrifice and take a little bit less. Again, because, we're happy for the Warriors to go out and sign Al Horford and stick under the second apron. Like, again, just another sacrificial perspective here, which is like, that's the biggest takeaway. I just kept laughing at times at what he was saying. It's like, man, you cannot sacrifice what's not available to you from anyone, right? There's a reason why Phoenix aren't willing to give you $30 million a year, or Sacramento, or whoever, even though these teams are really, really interested. They're not offering $30 million a year. They're offering 21 to 23. And the Warriors are actually outdoing that per year in their offer. And one of the big things I want to take from the Hoop Collective, because, I mean, some of this stuff, like, you get a player agent on, and it's such a big thing to have a player agent with the notable free agent left on the market, to have them on your show. Like, if I had got Aaron Turner on this podcast, I'd probably just be bowing down to him the whole time and letting him run the conversation and run the narrative and really push whatever he wants, right? Because he's been welcomed onto my show. And one of the things I want to take away is bravo, Brian Windhorst, because Brian Windhorst listened to the whole narrative push that Aaron Turner was trying to make, and he pushed back on it. And he said, hang on a second, I'm going to tell you what's going on from the Warriors' perspective. And again, to directly quote Brian Windhorst, he said, they're coming up with their offers. They're offering more years and more money. They're dealing with the second apron. But I do think that, unless I'm wrong, you correct me if I'm wrong, talking to Turner, they're offering more than either the Suns or the Kings have offered. And I think that was excellent, to not allow Turner to push the entire conversation, for Windhorst to come back and say, hang on a second. And the other thing he said, which I think was really important, he said on multiple times, was, you've done your job. He said to Aaron, he said, you've done your job. You got the team to increase their offer. And again, I don't want to speak for Windhorst, but he sounded like a guy that was a little bit frustrated with the fact that this agent was pushing the narrative that, hey, we've sacrificed this, we've sacrificed that, therefore the team needs to sacrifice and give us the player option. And Windhorst is like, whoa, hang on a second. They've upped their offers. You've done their job. You've done your job. You've done what your job is for the player, which is get the team that you are negotiating with to up their offer. The Warriors have done that by $30 million, an extra year and $30 million. That's significant. That's not nothing. That's significant. That's not the Warriors saying, oh, we've offered 2 years 45. Okay, here's 2 years 48, right? Like, it's not that. This is significant. And I think Windhorst was kind of pushing back, saying, hang on, you've done your job. They increased their offer. What's the problem? What's the problem? You're saying all these sacrifices you've made. The Warriors have sacrificed too. They've just given you an extra year and $30 million. That's what I got from Windhorst. He's a little bit frustrated, as I think we all are, that, again, Kuminga's camp is trying to push all these sacrifices, and therefore the Warriors should sacrifice the 3 years, give the third-year player option rather than team option. And you know what? I still think there's a chance the Warriors give in here, because I think the threat of the qualifying offer is so threatening and such a disaster that it wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors eventually said, all right, here's the player option, okay, for the third year. And it just honestly wouldn't shock me, right? But just the fact that, I suppose, this the nerve to go on and just continue to make these and push the narrative of these sacrifices in regard to, Al Horford and his signing, in terms of just continually bringing up the Jalen Johnson, Jalen Green contracts. It ain't relevant when you don't have a deal on the table elsewhere for $30+ million. And that's why I think Windhorst pushed back. Because he's like, hang on a second, they're offering you more than the Suns and the Kings are. What's the issue here? And so as soon as I think the biggest issue from Kuminga's side of this, and I like JK. Some of you guys on YouTube have ripped into me in the comments for defending JK at times. I still think he's an incredibly talented player. Still think the Warriors need him to a degree. Whether or not it's him on the floor as kind of this third dynamic scorer to try and help take some of the offensive burden off Steph or Jimmy, or, as we know, and as the Warriors really see this, as a trade chip, as a guy who you can go out and try and get another $25 million player mid-season who fits more with what you're trying to do as the team. So I can see why the Warriors want Kuminga back, right? And I can see why Kuminga's camp is trying to push the envelope here in terms of, we know you don't want to go to the qualifying offer route, so we're just going to continue pushing the envelope. But where I think they really went wrong was the quote that, hey, if you give the player option, we'll buy in. Okay? Because up until this point, your whole situation has been, well, we just want an opportunity for JK to thrive and to get better and have more on-ball opportunity and just become the player that he wants to be. And you know what? And I've said it multiple times, I don't have an issue with that. I do not have an issue with anyone in life trying to be the best they can be. And if they think they need to go to another situation to do that, fine. I've got absolutely no issue. My issue is, again, when you say all those things, then you say, oh, no, but if you give us the money and the contract rafter, then we'll buy in. So hang on a second. So what happened to all, even if you're still not going to get the great playing opportunity, the consistent role you want, right? Now you're going to buy in because we gave you the contract? Like, you can't have it both ways. And that's where I think that specific quote, right, and it wasn't from Turner. He obviously said that to Slater and Shams, and then they said that in their report that, hey, Kuminga will buy in if he gets the player option on the third-year contract. It's like, you can't have it both ways. And that's where I think things went off track a little bit for Kuminga's camp, and where people started looking at it as like, okay, no, like, the Warriors have increased their offer. Now it's up to you to actually accept this and take what is a reasonable offer on the table. And again, that's the whole point of Aaron Turner coming out over the past 48 hours, to try and flip that narrative back in Kuminga's direction, saying, whoa, hang on, look at all the other sacrifices we're making. When it's like, you can't sacrifice what's not there. And I know I've said that multiple times. So I'm going to finish up the episode. Let me know what you guys think. I don't know. I was just a little bit disappointed. I can see why he did it. And he does make he has made some decent points, and I get it, right? But it's all in the eye of the beholder, what position you're sitting. And again, I'm really glad that Windhorst kind of pushed back and tried to add a Warriors perspective to this. And Windhorst said, you've done your job. Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the Warriors are doing their job because they have leverage in and even Aaron Turner, and good on him. Aaron Turner said, you know what, there's no market. Like, there is no market, right? And so at least he was willing to concede that. But if you're willing to concede that, concede that, hey, the Warriors have upped their offer. You've done your job. You got a better offer from the team. Like, to me, just take it. Just take it. It's $48 million in guaranteed money. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Obviously, a little bit more to play out here, you'd imagine, but hopefully we get something in the next few days or in this upcoming week. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. Follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Also on TikTok and Instagram at Golden State with Mates as well. Thanks again to everyone that's tuned in, including those that are listening via your podcast feed, and I'll see you in the next episode.